been a minute again. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened to James editing that cockroach footage or whatever. We're gonna go on the fire escape though so I can chain smoke while I get through this. Ferguson. Nothing I have to say on this situation is an original thought. These are points that have been made by folks all over Twitter, all over Facebook. Follow the residents on the ground, yo. I've been hearing enough ignorant points repeated that I do think the things I have to say on this situation bear repeating, despite the fact that they're not unique perspectives. This respectability politics that is going on, just do what the white folk tell you and everything will be okay, is not an acceptable solution to the problem of systematized oppression and anti-black racism and police brutality. It's simply not. My nephew, black, 15 years old, straight A's, honors classes, star basketball player, expected to go D1. He gets stopped and harassed by the police. You have to remember the institutional memory of the police force. It came out of slave patrol, born in this country out of hunting down black folks. That's just fact. Look it up. That kind of institutional memory does not go away. Even if black people could do a certain thing to make themselves acceptable in white society, they shouldn't have to. People should not have to straighten their hair, dress a certain way, speak a certain way to have the right to live. This was a state-sanctioned murder of an 18-year-old kid, Michael Brown, and immediately the media tried to turn it. He was a thug, which is apparently the PC term for the N-word nowadays. Do you understand the absurdity of this? Whether or not someone fucking tried to bomb the Pentagon, U.S. citizens in this country are supposed to have the right to due process. If you're still spouting that ignorant bullshit about Michael Brown stealing a pack of cigars, check yourself. Even if you were right, since when do we just hunt down people for petty theft and shoot them? Oh, since forever, if the person happens to be the wrong skin color. Respectability politics and this idea that thugs deserve to die, check the ignorance. It is disgustingly rampant in your way of thinking. The media made this about the riots. I don't think something qualifies as a riot that lasts a few hours, one structure being burned. For the media to turn this into an issue, seriously, fuck you. There is a thing called righteous anger. God fucking tried to incite a riot by these standards of what a riot is. God walks into a temple and starts breaking shit, wielding a fucking whip. There is a time for peace and there is a time for righteous anger. We are not, absolutely not in a time for peace. Don't try to play like we are. Don't try to play like it's not acceptable for people to be pissed off. The response to the rebellion is using weapons that have been banned in international conflict. Amnesty International dispatched to a U.S. American city, needing more observers to come in because the first set was brutalized by the police. It is never okay to respond to an uprising, justified or not, with what would be considered an international war crime. In the case of Michael Brown's murder, when the uprising is righteous, it is actually disgusting that people justify this kind of use and brutalization. Calls for peace, respectability politics, this idea that due process isn't needed when someone's a thug. These are the things I have to discuss as opposed to discussing what white privilege means, what institutionalized oppression is, what anti-black racism looks like. Do you understand how disgusting it is that this is the focus of the media? Nothing to do with the issue at hand. Another young black person was murdered. That murder was sanctioned by our government. And I'm just tired of the ignorance. I'm tired of folks saying that this isn't a race issue. I'm tired of folks saying that this is getting too much attention. I'm tired of folks sitting around calling for peace. I went down to Ferguson. I had spoken to someone on the ground, asked if he thought there was a need for crisis counseling. He told me yes. He was wrong in a sense. It's not that folks aren't traumatized. It's not that folks aren't living with PTSD now. It's not that folks aren't terrified for their lives every waking second, because that's all true. That's all reality. Folks still in the midst of this do not need to talk to some out-of-town white girl, which is totally fine. There were out-of-town folks there, street medics, National Lawyers Guild, organizers of color. Most of those folks have left now. They've passed on the skills they've needed to. Folks in Ferguson have this on lockdown. It is their struggle. They are the start of this movement, and they don't need your ass going down there if you don't have anything to offer them. This holds true of me too. In retrospect, I maybe shouldn't have gone. I went with the information that had been given to me, and I don't regret it for a second, but folks don't need you there. With the exception of some Freedom Rider type buses headed down there, if you're a young person of color, this is your fight. Experiencing tear gas and rubber bullets, being assaulted by police officers, that's not your struggle. But this broader struggle, if you're a young person of color, get on one of them buses and get down there. And if you're not, get involved locally wherever you are. If there's nothing locally happening where you are, create something. Just because it is not the time for a mass migration to St. Louis does not mean you should not be doing something other than liking statuses and sharing videos. Do all that. We need to keep Ferguson relevant. We need to keep the fight against anti-Black racism relevant. We need to keep pressure on creating change around the militarization of our police forces. We need all of this. Keep sharing. Organization for Black Struggle, Dream Defenders, handsupunited.org. Check it out. I think I'm just gonna leave you with a side-by-side description. If that does not open your eyes to the anti-Black racism, the Boston bomber smoked copious amounts of weed, no big deal, and he liked hip-hop a lot, and someone who was murdered by the people that are in place to protect us in theory is described as no angel, who dabbled in drugs, who took to rapping recently. These are bad things when it comes from the Black kid. He was a kid. He was 18 fucking years old, people. If you want to cling to your ignorance that much,